Alright, what's up, everybody? We're going to do a little bit of recap. What did we learn from this career mode? Um, Pretty much the phases of our career were about right. We started off in that hot garbage phase till we hit about 70. Once we got about 70, we started becoming decent. The opponents we were matched up with, we were pretty close. Had some good fights. Up until I think it was maybe episode 9 in the series, we won the title. When we won the title, we were still, I think, maybe in 81, 82. We were barely into the 80s as far as like our overall ratings. I told y'all in the beginning, speed kills. I think my work speaks for itself that once we had 100% punch speed, and then even more specifically, once we had 100% in each hand, it was game over. Then, whenever we got our power punching up, that just reinforced everything from the previous two. Then, once we started adding health, stamina, like it got to the point where, hey, I could stand in the pocket. I could bang with the sluggers. I could bang with the Joe Frazier, and I didn't have to worry about getting hurt anymore. Uh, the problem that I think I demonstrated in this series was, like I told you initially, like, hey, we started off as hot garbage. Everybody else was upper 80s to begin with, and then, hey, we started coming up, and through hacking the game and accelerating our progression as much as possibly human, we kind of came up to that level to where we were, I'm not going to say meeting them, but realistically, we were meeting or exceeding them. That, hey, we were facing a 94 overall Tyson Fury. We were facing 93 overall Floyd Patterson. Joe Frazier was up in the 90s. That, hey, we were facing these dudes at their peak. And that's the way the game should go. But that's not the way that they designed it. I'm probably going to do another series where we run through this without cheat engine. We're not hacking the game. We're going through. Mostly, this is going to be for your console players. That they are going to come out with this game on console release, uh, and they're probably not going to have access to cheat engine. They're not going to have access to be able to try and manipulate the game to make it, whether you want to say, better experience for themselves. It's not going to happen. So, okay, let's talk about progression and regression. Now, our progression, we hack the game to accelerate our shit as much as possible. That we went up in our stats, we went up in the rankings, we did everything as fast as what the game engine would allow. Now, I told you this is probably my 10th, 11th, 12th playthrough of a career. In previous iterations, there was one time where once I got cheat engine and I was like, hey, let's see how bad we can break the game. I went through. I believe there are 30, 30 individual stat categories that can be assigned, trained up. There's 30 categories. I went through and I individually found each location in Cheat Engine. And then I manually set it to like 150 across the board. Whenever I did that, I never set weight, fight sharpness, energy for training camp. And the problem was, hey, yeah, I was at 150, but everything was grayed out, and there was nothing for us to really train. And there was no way for us to really train and get our stuff up to where it needed to be, ready for the fight. In retrospect, I probably would have done it different. Perhaps, maybe I'll make another video on that of, like, if you really want to break this game and you want to start out within the first, 4, 5, 6 fights to being, hey, I am completely pimped out, maxed out, and I just want to lay people out. I can show that. But I don't want to say it took the fun out of it, but here's where the career mode works, is that it's kind of that building up phase to eventually make it to a championship. I've won Undisputed. That's the fun part, because you're starting off at a disadvantage. You're going to have to use your boxing skills to try and win fights. After that, then we come into, I'm going to call it the maintain phase. Like, we've already won the strap. We made it up fast enough that we're facing people when they're still relatively in their prime. But once those initial boxers start sliding down to, 84, 85 overall, they're done. They don't present any competition. And then the problem is that the game does not introduce new fighters on any regular basis. And even the ones that come into the game, whether they're not maximizing their training camp, I don't know what the computer actually does with these, we're going to call them simulated boxers that come into the game. They never progress. Like, if you look back at all the videos in the career, we might have faced a dude that was, I think it was like Terry Phillips, was like an 84, was the highest overall that we ever saw. And then the problem is, even if we got towards the end of our career, they made it to 84, and then they even started regressing. We were forced to retire at age 50. Now, I'll tell you damn well, if the game would have let us keep going to 100, you noticed through cold roll gem of, hey, we were getting the 3x training bonus, and we were getting the one stat added to all of our stats. We were 101 across the board. That never fell. We were able to reach that level, maintain that level, and the only thing that started slipping on us was those 6, like I told you, the 6 critical stats that we couldn't train. And, hey, that was, your courage, your conditioning, and then it was the 4 cut resistance, swelling resistance, body resistance, all that stuff that typically we're getting from our cut man. And I know in one of the videos I pointed out that, hey, our cut man hasn't changed. We were, 99, 96, 100 overall in a lot of those stats, and by the time we reached the end, hey, they were down to 76, 70 by the time we got to the end of our career, and that's the only thing that was pulling our overall down, was those ones we couldn't train. Now, I know I showed a little bit of it throughout the videos of the objectives of, hey, how do we train those 6 things that we can't train. The only objective I think we did not even attempt or knock out, I mean, I know I attempted it, was there's one of, hey, send 12 insulting offers to a boxer, and that would have given us, I believe, 5 additional courage over the level 1, level 2, each one of them was 1 point, so 5 total. There was another one that I did notice as far as courage, either courage or conditioning, but I think it was courage, of, hey, if you get knocked down in a fight and you get back up to win the fight, you could earn courage that way, but it's like, what's the point of us getting knocked down just to, if we wanted to see how high we could push the stats? Make a lot of sense, hey, no, I'm not intentionally going to let myself get knocked down. Speaking of knocked down, okay, so we got rocked, I think, maybe 3 times the entire career. We're talking over 130, if you include the amateur fights, that's 4 additional 134 fights. We got knocked down. We got rocked 3 times. We never touched the canvas. We weren't even remotely challenged to. There was a couple times in some fights. can't remember. I know there was one Larry Holmes that I was watching earlier where like, ooh, snaps, man, Larry's putting in some work, and we had to just kind of back off. Like, hey, let's dance around, let's let ourselves recover. Once we got recovered, boom, we was back in hammering them. Um, so yeah, and this was on the hardest difficulty, Undisputed, and even then, it really didn't ever present us a challenge. So I think that's done a pretty good job of summing up our career, um, this playthrough. Now, here's where I think Steel City Interactive needs to change things. I don't think they necessarily need to change our personal boxer's regression because in this playthrough, we hacked the game and we were doing things above and beyond what normally would be allowable. That, hey, you can see the power of just eliminating recovery. Yeah, you go through a 12-week training camp, you're going to have a minimum of 3, if not 4, recovery weeks just to get your energy back up where it needs to be and all set for the fight. Um, they need to introduce more boxers more often, and they need to allow them to either pimp themselves out or do a better job at the 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 fight camp, that their own training within their career needs to be improved. Because it's like, I'm sorry, but even the dudes that came in later in the career, the new boxers, if you're only reaching an 84, 85, uh, that's still not much of a challenge. Another thing that we learned was traits are ridiculously overpowered. What I mean by ridiculously overpowered is let's look at our hand speed. We had the 15% boost, and I don't think there was anything that was taken away from it. So we had 115 hand speed in each hand. When it comes to punch power, I know we had a 13% boost from bombs away. We had another 5% from us being a swarmer, so we were running like 113 power in each hand. The I believe it was Tireless 2 that we had that allowed us to throw punches in combination, and it was like 20% less stamina penalty. So we were able to throw an ass load of punches. Hey, when we're throwing 115 speed, we're throwing, 118 on the power. There was nobody in this game that was going to withstand that abuse. And it wasn't a question of if we were going to knock them out. It was a question of just when. Were we going to do it in round 1 or round 2? And really, that determining factor of, hey, whether we were knocking them out inside of 1 round or it took 2 or 3, it really was based upon how much health and courage that boxer had, which was also directly related to how high their overall was. That the people that were up there in the upper 80s or they were in the low 90s as far as an overall, it was mostly because they had a big health pool that we had to chop through. That, hey, we weren't chopping them down within 30, 45 seconds, which you saw at the end of their career. That, yeah, most people within 30 seconds, 45 seconds, they were down on the mat. It would get up once, but hey, if they didn't have the courage anymore, we put them down a second time. It was done. It was a wrap. They had no answer. So, yeah, more boxers come in more frequently, allow them to reach a potential that we potentially could relate to. Now, I plan on doing another series where we don't cheat the game and just show you, hey, this is the normal playthrough, and here's how you manipulate your fight camp. This is how you control your energy, your weight, all these different things. Usually, depending on where I started off, I think the highest I was ever able to make it up to was, I think, a 94 or a 95 overall. Lots of times, depending on where I started, how it progressed, and a lot of it had to do with injuries. And this is another thing I'll touch on. Okay, so because we hacked our energy and fight sharpness, etc., through other career playthroughs, I noticed that once you got to about 65, 70% on your energy through a training camp, that's when you started seeing the minor injuries. You would sometimes see the major injuries. We never had a major injury that stopped our fight camp. Our opponents, I think it was maybe 3, 4 times, they suffered an injury, and that forced the training camp to end, and hey, then we had to renegotiate another fight. Um, that's one thing we didn't have to deal with. I know we're going to deal with it in the next video of having to deal with injuries. Um, Overall, I believe it is a solid game. It's a good game. It needs some tweaks, especially for the career mode, that it needs to be a little more challenging. It's not like the AI was, their script, oh, no, they just fought like hot garbage or anything. No. Some of those best fights I had, if you look back on them in the videos, was like, what was that, episode 11, 12, 13, it was like, hey, whenever I was fighting, 93, 94 overall, Tyson Furies, Floyd Pattersons, that, hey, I, I actually had to work to, hey, let me try and create that angle, boom, and pop them, I couldn't just walk straight up at him and be like, 1, 2, 3 pieces in a biscuit, and boom, you're down to the canvas. No, it didn't work that way. We actually had to fight them, be a little bit smart, and hey, sometimes it took a couple rounds. And hey, honestly, forcing me to go 4 or 5 rounds to knock somebody out, that was a little bit more of a challenge. It was a little more fun. I enjoyed it a lot more. Um, but that was my personal preference. Um, yeah, so that's pretty much, I think that's about all I have to say about the career mode. We had fun, and I'm probably going to put up another one here soon. So until then, peace. Y'all be good.